Hello, and welcome to the Poetry Pea Podcast, where we dive into the world of haiku and other short-form poetry with curiosity, creativity, and a pinch of fun. I'm your host, Patricia. Today's episode is something a little bit special. It's our very first Poetry Pea Salon, a live event, yes, live, in which poets came together to read, discuss, and celebrate haiku. Now, as this was a live event, there were just a few hiccups along the way. Nothing major, just the charming unpredictability that comes with anything done in real time. But I assure you, it shouldn't affect your enjoyment one little bit. You can also watch the full event on YouTube if you like the visual experience or want to relive the conversation with a cuppa in hand. My preference, as you know, is for a cup of rooibos tea with mint and ginger. Delicious. What's yours? So anyway, this event was all about Zōka and the excellent book, One Thread. And I have to be open and honest with you here and tell you that I do have a little bit of a selection of my work in the book. But today you're going to hear poets read some of their work, which to them epitomizes the essence of Zōka. And of course, the very lovely Janice Doppler, who edited this anthology and was the driving force behind the book, is on hand to talk to you too. Now, during this episode, you might hear a few terms or references that are new or unfamiliar. Don't worry. It's all part of the fun. I always say that reading and listening to poetry is both pleasure and an education. And if you've joined me for the last 8 seasons, you'll know I've certainly learned a great deal. And I continue to read books, essays, and poems with that dual purpose in mind. And I'd encourage you to take note of anything that sparks your curiosity. Maybe do a little bit of exploring of your own. You'll find some extra resources added to the show notes. Okay, let's get going. Here's our recent live event. The first poet up to read to you is Don Baird, who wrote about Zōka, the power of becoming. Enjoy.
Starlit morning, the voice of spring in the waterfall. Starlit morning, the voice of spring in the waterfall. Teetering grass, just moments ago, a dragonfly. Teetering grass, just moments ago, a dragonfly. Mid-afternoon, the slow summer breeze of a butterfly. Mid-afternoon, the slow summer breeze of a butterfly. Waning moon, the scent of autumn in a teacup. Waning moon, the scent of autumn in a teacup. Nagasaki, in her belly, the sound of an open mail. Nagasaki, in her belly, the sound of an open mail.
Next is someone we know very well at Poetry Pea, Carla Ramesh. Carla wrote the foreword to the book and a section about the elements, ether, wind, fire, water, and earth. And now she's here to read us some poetry. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Patricia. Falling leaves. Falling leaves. If only sorrow could be contained in a palm. Falling leaves. If only sorrow could be contained in a palm. Bone density. A branch crumbles. Bone density. A branch crumbles long after the forest fire. Bone density. A branch crumbles long after the forest fire. Kala Chakra, the shadow of a moth circling the hour. Kala Chakra, the shadow of a moth circling the hour. Winter loneliness. Winter loneliness. The sofa she vacates holds her shape. Winter loneliness. The sofa she vacates holds her shape. Crossing river boulders. Crossing river boulders, the moon becomes whole again. Crossing river boulders, the moon becomes whole again. Thank you.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce one of Poetry Pea's very own editors, Vandana Parashar, who gives us an Indian perspective on Zōka. Lovely to see you, Vandana.
Thank you. My pleasure. Making up for the little space she takes. Robin's song. Making up for the little space she takes. Robin's song. One-way street. The fragrance of jasmine everywhere. One-way street. The fragrance of jasmine everywhere. Deep summer. Another bird drops out of the morning chorus. Deep summer. Another bird drops out of the morning chorus. Waterfall. Not falling for you, not falling for me. Waterfall. Not falling for you, not falling for me. Telling a story I can't understand. Wind in the reeds. Telling a story I can't understand. Wind in the reeds. Thank you.
Nina Singh is our next poet, and a little bird tells me she's not feeling that good today. So bless you, Nina, for coming along. We'll definitely forgive you if there are coughs and wheezes along the way and wish you a very speedy recovery. Now, Nina wrote about Zōka as poetic persona, and she's going to read a little bit for us now. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Patricia. Autumn breeze ruffles the reeds, almost bird song. Autumn breeze ruffles the reeds, almost bird song. Streak of lightning, a white shell gleams still whiter. Streak of lightning, a white shell gleams still whiter. Summer sunshine, laburnum blossoms scatter their scent of yellow. Laburnum blossoms scatter their scent of yellow. Summer sunshine, laburnum blossoms scatter their scent of yellow. Zazen, a lotus rises above the mud. Zazen, a lotus rises above the mud. Autumn song, in green spaces, a linnet's wings. Autumn song, in green spaces, a linnet's wings. Thank you.
Lakshmi Iyer is a Poetry Pea regular. And like a few of the other poets, our Joy is joining us from the Indian subcontinents. Your topic, Lakshmi, was very interesting. I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, so you can put me straight. Prakriti, which was the pulsating voice of the gunas. So forgive me if I've got that wrong. Do correct me. And
Prakriti. It's
okay,
Prakriti.
thank you. Okay, let's hear your poetry.
Thank you. Newspaper kite. The obituary page, now closer to heaven. Newspaper kite. The obituary page, now closer to heaven. War museum. Pin drop silence in the gun room. War museum. Pin drop silence in the gun room. Dung splattered street. And Iktara tunes the Godhuli. Dung splattered street. And Iktara tunes the Godhuli. Maddening wind. The crow chases an eagle for nothing. Maddening wind. The crow chases an eagle for nothing. Autumn clothesline. The same old innerwear taking turns. Autumn clothesline. The same old innerwear taking turns. Thank you.
Now we're coming back to Europe to hear from Ileana Stoyanova, editor of the British Haiku Society's journal Blithe Spirit, who wrote in the book about navigating through Nava. Again, probably pronounced that wrong, Ileana, so you can put me straight. But what struck me when I was reading your particular section was, as it did with many of them, and Lakshmi's as well, was that we share, wherever we come from in the world, we do seem to share certain philosophical and religious bits and bobs. That we have so much in common, more in common than separates us, really.
Yes, indeed. I totally agree with you. Attached to the rest of the world, baby's first smile. Attached to the rest of the world, baby's first smile. Sudden rain, the silent fall of buds swelling to bloom. Sudden rain, the silent fall of buds swelling to bloom. Moon path, no ripple, no cloud. Moon path, no ripple, no cloud. Night river, a single leaf floats on the moon path. Night river, a single leaf floats on the moon path. Misty lake, only the arch of the swan's neck. Misty lake, only the arch of the swan's neck. Thank you very much.
Last for this section of the reading is Nikki Gutierrez, a Theo poet from Ohio in the US. I don't know about you, but until I met Nikki, I didn't know such a thing existed. But now I do. Thank you. And Nikki wrote this time about Zōka, a haiku cosmology.
Morning sun, a blue heron lifts one leg. Morning sun, a blue heron lifts one leg. Daily prayer, the cry of the cicada. Daily prayer, the cry of the cicada. Virgin snow, the cardinal cuts through. Virgin snow, the cardinal cuts through. Temple shade. One more spider lily blooms. Temple shade. One more spider lily blooms. Breaking the moon. The plop of a bullfrog. Breaking the moon. The plop of a bullfrog. Thank you.
So a huge thank you to all the poets who've read to us so far. Now I'd like to turn to Janice, who got this particular Zōka ball rolling. So I have some questions for Janice, as she knows. Janice, when you came to Poetry Pea for the first time to talk about Zōka, back in September 2023 in Series 6, link in the show notes, of course, you said it was hard to define, but since then, you've written another essay on the topic, which was published in Frog Pond, although I should mention that the subject matter of both essays are in this book. You've also compiled a book with this book with content from the aforementioned essays. You've had thoughts from Zōka from around the world, and you've had poetry, not necessarily written for the book, but poets who contributed to it have used their poetry to illustrate the points they've made. So basically, you've done a great deal more thinking about Zōka. Are you any nearer to coming up with a definition?
I've settled on a simple definition, at least for now. And I define Zōka as the energy that drives transformation in the cosmos. It's a simple definition for an extremely complex concept. The meaning is understood intuitively rather than with the mind, and it seeps in gradually over time. Think about love. A dictionary definition is a feeling of deep affection. That definition doesn't really explain what love is. We all know what it feels like from experience and intuition, but the dictionary definition doesn't really help us understand. And Zōka's like that. Understanding from experience and intuition gets us a lot further than my definition. And the definition of others, and each of the poets that are in the book has their own definition, and they're available in the book. Defining Zōka carries a risk that makes it sound like there's something that can be looked for, or there's something that can be found and composed so that you compose Zōka haiku. But we don't go looking for gravity, but we might write about ocean tides or falling apples. We don't go looking for electricity, but we can write about lightning. We don't go looking for Zōka, but we can write haiku that communicate what we experience of the energies of Zōka and what it's animating and what it's transforming in the universe and in ourselves.
It's a topic that sometimes, Janice, I feel I've got it, and then a minute later it'll slip away from me. But I'm persevering, and I think we'll come through the questions and maybe through the questions of other people to give me more of a sort of handle on it. I think I'm too much possibly of a black and white person to do it. So, as I mentioned, you've got poets from all around the world who joined you to compile this book with their thoughts on Zōka. Did you give us, well, I know the answer to this because I was one of them, but did you give them any guidance on Zōka, or did they come with knowledge needed for the book?
Some of the poets became aware of Zōka in the essays that were in Frog Pond or the workshops that were on Poetry Pea. But some already knew about it. Don Baird wrote about Zoka a couple of decades ago, and some of the poets that were in the book knew of his work or that of other scholars. And Kala Ramesh wrote about the similarity between Prakriti and Zoka and connected it to haiku, and so people were aware from her reading. So it was really a mix.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned already when we spoke, or when Lakshmi and Ileana were reading, there were a lot of common themes within the book. I've got my common themes, I pet themes, but I wondered, as you were putting it all together, what struck you?
Well, I think the most obvious theme is the relationship between Zoka and seasons. Since changes across seasons is fundamental to the working of Zoka, and creating awareness of those seasonal changes is one of the ways of cultivating awareness of the workings of Zoka. So that's one theme. Another is that Zoka is something to be experienced. And I think that's one of the places where confusion lies. Some people think you get the definition and then you know what it is. But you really have to experience it and let it seep in, as I said before. Poets in the book write about multiple ways of experiencing it. Some write about just getting into nature regularly. Others talk about creating art or playing music or Zen or other meditation or Tai Chi. So the experiencing aspect is a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is the interconnectedness of everything in the universe. And as the essays are laid out in the book, you can start at the beginning and it zooms out from what Zoka is to the interconnectedness of all things. But it also can be read backwards. That was quite intentional to have it go both ways. And if you can, after you've read it from front to back first, if it's read from the last essay back towards the front, it zooms in from the wide view of interconnectedness to the narrow view of Zoka as the connections between everything, the connecting energy between everything. And then the fourth theme is something that you and Ileana mentioned, and that's the commonality across cultures. And from my perspective, since the beginning of human time, people have been yearning for connection with something mysterious that's beyond our understanding. And people have created philosophical or spiritual systems of understanding. And two Eastern views that were touched on in the book are Zoka and Prakriti. And Zoka originated in ancient wisdom texts in China and spread to Japan. And Prakriti originated in India in the Bhagavad Gita, which is fundamental for Hindu. And then in the West, views that are touched on in the book are the Christian belief in God as the creator, and the modern Bulgarian concept of Nava, which is inhaling and exhaling at the same time. And noticing those commonalities is something that helps us realize that we're all united, that there's more that unites humans than that separates us from one another, regardless of where we live or what we believe.
Yeah, I think it's the Christian belief of God as creator that puts a spanner in the works for me sometimes when I say that I think I've got it, and then that little niggle, that idea pops into my head and it sort of pushes all the other possibilities out the window. But I'm getting there, Janice, I'm getting there. As well as common themes, I found some interesting, what I called outliers. You and I have discussed whether that's the right word, and we'll talk about that in a minute, or you'll put me straight in a minute, I think. But I'm thinking of Robert Erlandson and his fractals, for example, or Hiroyuki Murakami's idea of Zoka evoking a deeper connection with curated nature than untouched nature. Because, if you think about it, certainly where I live here, and when I lived in the UK, I'm very familiar with the idea that there's no real natural nature anymore. Most of it has been adapted, changed by man. You'd be really hard pressed to find something that hasn't been in the UK. But I was also struck by Emiko Miyashita's thoughts. And if you'll allow me to sum up, she said, I think it's the lady, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. She said there was a difference between a verse that comes to the poet and one that is crafted using brains and skills. And that's a topic that comes up quite often in the haiku world. And she also said that in the Eastern way of perception, nature and humans are one. And then you get into sort of that thoughts about what is Senryu then. So yes, not things we should talk about today necessarily, but certainly there are elements in the book that when I've read it, I've come away and thought, okay, I've got to explore that idea further. But given that you and I disagree on the word outliers, would you care to say anything about them?
Well, as I've said before, I wouldn't really call any of the poet's views as outliers. And that's because my intent was to gather a group with as wide a range of views as possible. And Zoka's, the way I understand it, Zoka's a creative energy that is in each poet, and we're each a microcosm of the energy, and it's equally valid in each one of us, regardless of what our perspective is. So there can't be an outlier if we're all equal. And to me, it's poets that seem to be outliers might depend on a reader's starting point. And with Bob Erlandson, for example, he wrote after the first essay was published in Frog Pond. Bob, who I didn't know at all, wrote to me about the creativity of Zōka, and he compared it to fractals. He's a scientist, and as soon as I read that, I knew that was something I could agree with absolutely. And I didn't know at that point if I was going to put a book together, but I knew if I ever did that fractals had to be in it. So in a way, fractals, which struck you as an outlier, was one of the beginning points. So and we could start anywhere. I mean, I've told friends that I've given the book to. There was one who doesn't write haiku, but she does martial arts. She does Tai Chi. And so I told her, read Don's essay about Zōka, and then pointed her to Bill Setty's
Yes.
essay about Tai Chi. And I could go on, but I won't. That gets the point across.
I think we probably won't. We're always going to disagree on the word outliers, but I suspect my scientist husband would know exactly where you were coming from with the idea of fractals. But talking about just the ideas, I mean, there are a lot of ideas in this book flying around that, as I said, made me want to come away and research other things. Was there anything in there that surprised you?
Well, in the beginning, the thing that surprised me the most was Hiroyuki Murakami's notion that Zōka is about human created beauty. And it seems to me that what he was saying is that human created beauty is as beautiful as natural beauty. And I was kind of puzzled by that at the beginning, but then I thought about when I walk in Chinese or Japanese landscape gardens, I feel as deep a peace as when I walk in the woods or an ocean beach. And haiku are natural creations. So I've come around to his really valuing his view that was a surprise at the beginning. And now now that the work of Zōka, I mean of One Thread is over, I can actually read it for pleasure and for learning. And so when I read it now, I keep finding nuggets that continue to deepen my understanding of Zōka. And for me, each one of those new nuggets is a small surprise, even though I've been reading them for a long time now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I feel the same way about it when I pick it up and read it. There's just so much in there. Thank you, Janice. We should say, or we should find out for people who haven't got the book already, how do they buy it?
Well, it's available on Amazon pretty much everywhere in the world, but not Amazon doesn't sell in India. But if anywhere where Amazon sells books, it's there.
Okay. I'll put a link in the show notes so people can go from there.
Okay.
So, Janice, we're going to talk again, but we're going to have a little pause in our discussion and have more readings, which is lovely to hear
Sounds
some more
good.
poetry. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
So in this section, let's start with a reading from Sean O'Connor, perhaps better known for his haibun than his haiku. He is, of course, the editor of the Haibun Journal. But, you know, in order to write haibun, you got to know your stuff. And, of course, haiku are sort of part of the package, aren't they, Sean? So, Sean wrote of the Zoka of night driving, starting his piece with the sentence, "Writing is like driving a car at night." And if you want to know why, you're going to have to get hold of the book and find out.
Thank you. Hidden and revealed in the sway of bulrushes, tonight's only star. Hidden and revealed in the sway of bulrushes, tonight's only star. Mountain thunder, silencing 1,000 cicadas. Mountain thunder, silencing 1,000 cicadas. Busy platform, between passing trains, the sound of crickets. Busy platform, between passing trains, the sound of crickets. By Dogen's stream, from across the universe, many birds singing. By Dogen's stream, from across the universe, many birds singing. This nothingness world, in all its insouciance, slow falling snow. This nothingness world, in all its insouciance, slow falling snow.
So next up is Patricia Machmiller to come along to read to us another Patricia, another haiku poet who, like me, is guided by the seasons. Patricia wrote of wonderment.
Hydrangea. Over tea, mulling the idea of utopia. Hydrangea. Over tea, mulling the idea of utopia. In the growing heat, the garden becomes quiet, as if listening. In the growing heat, the garden becomes quiet, as if listening. Beyond the rainbow, who'd have thought there'd be barbed wire there. Beyond the rainbow, who'd have thought there'd be barbed wire there? Milky Way, a communal reading of the Odyssey. Milky Way, a communal reading of the Odyssey. Underwater canyon. In the shape of night, a whale comes. Underwater canyon. In the shape of night, a whale comes. Thank you.
Now we're visited by Chuck Brinkley. And your piece, Chuck, suggests that Zōka is akin to the stuff of life. And you know what? As I was reading it, I found myself nodding along. Thank you very much.
Forsythia. The widow's blinds part slightly. Forsythia. The widow's blinds part slightly. Still life. A fruit fly switches peaches. Still life. A fruit fly switches peaches. Jasmine spilling over the stone wall. A come back here hug. Jasmine spilling over the stone wall. A come back here hug. Alley frost except where he slept. Alley frost except where he slept. A snowshoe hare hops through its breath. Morning star. A snowshoe hare hops through its breath. Morning star.
So Joe Balistrieri. Joe, I have terrible problems with your surname. Am I getting it anywhere near right?
Very good.
Thank you. Joe writes, one of 10,000 things in the book. Zōka as the music of universe. And to know why, I would highly recommend reading her section of the book.
Under the branches of oak and leaf litter, the first trillium. Under the branches of oak and leaf litter, the first trillium. The foghorns wail, sheeted in thick mist, iron ore ships. The foghorns wail, sheeted in thick mist, iron ore ships. Crackle speak, curls of whittled cherry wood feed Grandpa's fire. Crackle speak, curls of whittled cherry wood feed Grandpa's fire. Winter hills, with each boot crunch, scent of sage. Winter hills, with each boot crunch, scent of sage. Thunderstorm, through the car window, a flash of forsythia. Thunderstorm, through the car window, a flash of forsythia. Thank you.
To bring our reading to a close today, we are joined by Bill Sethi, a fellow practitioner of Tai Chi, I believe, and his piece is entitled Daoist, I can never say that word as well, Bill, Daoist Flavored Haiku.
Thank you. Washer, dryer, zazen at the laundromat. Washer, dryer, zazen at the laundromat. Waiting for the hot water from a thin branch, the last leaf waves. Waiting for the hot water from a thin branch, the last leaf waves. The sweetness of silence after the news. The sweetness of silence after the news. Movement in stillness, stillness in movement. Green heron hunts. Movement in stillness, stillness in movement. Green heron hunts. Pale moon on Chesapeake Bay, ghost of the oyster. Pale moon on Chesapeake Bay, ghost of the oyster.
I'm going to invite Janice to come back. I think it will be very interesting for us to find out, well, just a few things, but first of all, how is Zōka relevant to the writers of English language Japanese short forms?
I think that's a really important question because the impulse to write emerges from the energies of Zōka within each poet, whether we're aware of it or not. So if it's there, whether we're aware of it or not, why bother even thinking about it? But for me, cultivating awareness of Zōka is relevant for writers because it has the potential to open what's beyond the boundaries of ordinary thought. And going beyond those boundaries is exactly what the best haiku do. And regardless of where we are in our haiku practice, there's always further we can go. I mean, Tai Chi has come up multiple times in the past few minutes. And if you think about someone who's practiced Tai Chi for 5 years and practiced Tai Chi for 10 years and practiced for 25 years, there's a huge difference. It just keeps building and building and building. And writing haiku is like that. Sensing Zōka, I think, is like that. I haven't been aware of it for that many years myself, but I know it's been changing for me. So I think that makes it really relevant for poets or for writers. And all of the people who contributed, all of the poets who contributed to the book demonstrated how they think Zōka is relevant by talking about how it's relevant to their writing. And in one thread, the work of each of the poets was organized as sort of a mini chapbook that's got an essay that talks about how Zōka impacts their haiku. And then there's each included a dozen haiku that illustrates what they thought. And so each poet is sort of a mini glimpse of how Zōka can be relevant to contemporary poets.
What about the reader? How does what do you think one thread brings to its readers?
Well, for readers, as I've said before today, understanding Zōka fosters looking beyond the boundaries of ordinary thought. So in the book, there's 26 different poets or different poets with different interpretations of Zōka. And I think of each as a finger pointing towards Zōka. And readers can look between each of those fingers to develop their own understanding of Zōka and find something that fits with their own experience and their own guiding philosophy or their own spiritual path.
I think maybe what I'd add to that is that it's going to spark ideas for people who are really interested in improving their own craft. It will give people lots of places or lots of things to think about and to explore as well. I think that's true of the book. So, Janice, you've been thinking about Zōka for some time now. How has the work you've done exploring it affected or changed the practice of your writing?
Well, I became aware of the wonders of the natural world decades before I ever heard the word Zōka. And most of my haiku focuses on nature, and that hasn't changed. But what has changed is how I look at the world, and what I notice composing haiku. I feel like I'm increasingly aware of interactions and moments of change. I really look for moments of change in whatever I experience in nature. And I feel like I'm more intent on noticing the beauty in little tiny moments, ordinary moments, rather than sitting and waiting for something special to happen and then think that's worth writing a haiku about. And what I notice isn't always haiku worthy, but some of it is so haiku worthy that it's beyond words that anybody could ever express. And those kinds of moments are happening more often, and they satisfy a deep yearning that I've had as long as I can remember, to connect with something that's beyond the ordinary world.
So, would you say that just the process of thinking about it has given you or made you more in tune with the environment, made you see the small or appreciate the small things?
I'm not sure that I notice the small things more, so I don't know if I appreciate them more. The thing that really strikes out to me is that a couple of weeks ago I was standing on the edge between a salt marsh and a bay at low tide, and it was quite vast. And I know from reading Basho and learning about Japanese aesthetics that sabi is about loneliness. And I was by myself, but I said out loud, Basho would say this is sabi, but this place is not lonely. It's just filled with life. And so that set me into a deeper study about sabi, and it's much too much to go into right now, but I'm just looking differently and seeing things differently and asking different questions and finding different answers.
Okay. So we are coming to the end of our session. Just to be on the safe side, Janice, remind people where the book can be bought.
Amazon.com.
Jolly good. Link in the show notes. So thank you very much, Janice. Thank you for the pleasure of being in the book and working with you on the book. Thank you for coming along today and talking to us. And thank you to all the poets who came along today to read. It's such a pleasure to hear haiku spoken out loud. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Wasn't that great? If you'd like to join us at our next salon event, you should know that priority seats go to our members. It's a very intimate affair. Becoming a member is a lovely way to support the podcast and help us to keep creating content like this. You'll find all the details about membership, including how to join, in the show notes. And what other goodies will you find in the show notes? A full list of today's participants, further reading and resources if you'd like to dive deeper, and a link to the wonderful book we featured here today, One Thread. After the main reading, we had a really open and honest discussion. It was a lot of fun and a rare opportunity to share thoughts in a relaxed and secure setting. That part of the conversation remains private, just for our live audience. Perhaps another great reason to join us live next time? Thank you so much for being with us today. We're really glad you came along. Take care. And I'll see you next time for more poetry, more haiku, and more community. Till then, keep writing. And don't forget to check out those show notes, because I think you'll find some little treats in there. Ciao!